It's been said that change comes no matter what we do. It's inevitable. What we should be searching for is progress. And I know everybody in this room is very concerned and interested in that word, in your industry, with the challenges that you face today. When I was working at WARK, playing rock and roll, A for adult, RK for rock, it was, 15 ARK, adult rock, Hagerstown, Maryland. That's kind of how it sounded. I got called into the boss's office one day, and I'll never forget. And anytime you get called into the boss's office, especially in radio, they didn't usually praise you. It's not usually like, we're going to give you a raise, Andy. We love what you're doing. We're going to pay you another $10,000, $15,000 a year to play rock and roll music. That's not usually what happens when you get called into the boss's office. So I'm a little, kind of feeling a bit intrepid, I guess, as I'm walking into the boss's office. And he sits me down and he says, Andy, we're getting rid of the rock and roll. I said, what? We're 15 ARK. We're a rock and roll radio station. We're getting rid of the rock and roll. I have this vision. AM radio has got to get rid of the music. It's got to go towards talk. I said, talk? Yeah, you talk to the listeners. That's what you do. I go, well, that's okay, different, but, I'm not real happy about this. And then, of course, the next phrase, and you know where this is going, was, well, if you don't like it, I'll find somebody else and you can just leave. Well, of course, I button my jacket up at that moment, and I say to him, of course. And when do you want to start this transformation? Tomorrow. Tomorrow morning. And I'd like you to do the morning show at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, doing a talk show. Something I'd never done, ever in my life before. You talk about being nervous, you talk about being upset. I was upset about it, actually. And so I stormed down the hall in this little building we're in at 15 ARK in Hagerstown, Maryland, small little radio market. And I go to the first turntable I can find as I'm going on my air shift, which was about 10 minutes after the boss's conversation. Not exactly a great way to go from that conversation to, hi, Andy Thomas, 15 ARK, great afternoon here in Hagerstown. I wasn't exactly feeling very excited about it. But I wanted to make a statement to my audience, and I'll never forget what I did. I pulled out a record, and if some of you have it, hold on to it, because it's worth a fortune. You remember Jim Morrison and the Doors? One of the greatest poets of our time. Yeah, he was whacked out on drugs. There are a lot of stories I could tell you, and some of them aren't pretty. But he had songs like Light My Fire and, Touch Me, and songs like that. But he had one particular song that was called When the Music's Over. So I very symbolically grab this record, I stick it down on the actual turntable, and symbolically to my audience, I say goodbye to rock and roll. And I go home and I'm still kind of fuming about it, and how am I going to feel about tomorrow morning? And I get up, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, get up, and I come into the radio station, have to be there at about 5:15, start my shift at 6, and I have no music. Can't play it, been told not to use it. All I can do is talk. And guess what? I start to talk and the phone calls come in and I go, this is fun. This is a blast. I don't even have to lift my arm to put records constantly on turntables, worry about whether that song is 4 minutes and 55 seconds or 3 minutes and 25 seconds. And by the way, if you ever wondered what old rock and roll DJs did when they had to go to the, excuse the expression, men's room during a record shift, we put on MacArthur Park, if any of you are young enough to remember MacArthur Park, because it was 10 minutes long. So we had to calculate enough time and we had to pray that the record wouldn't skip or get held up, or otherwise you would know that we're not in the facility playing the music at the time that we should be. But hey, we're sometimes the only person in the entire building. So as a talk show host, I started to get underway, and it changed my life, course of my life. That little forced change produced for me, because I accepted it, something called progress. What would have happened in my life if the boss hadn't called me into the office and said, you got to give up rock and roll? Don't know. It would have been a different world, a different life, and I wouldn't have ended up where I am now. What would have happened to me if I hadn't have been let go in Charleston, South Carolina, and I ended up at Goodwill Industries doing something very different than I've ever done ever in my life before running a staffing agency? It changed my life.